training camp is around the corner. We can almost hear the pads being cracked right now. This is the PHLY Eagles Show. That's Fran Duffy. I'm Zach Berman. Fran, I want to ask you, let's discuss our favorite things about training camp. We'll go back and forth. Your three, my three, you first. What's your favorite thing about training camp?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be one-on-one drills. To me, when you're looking at training camp practice, there's a lot to take in. You know, you are one set of eyeballs. There's no way, if you try to see a little, you try to see a lot, you typically see a little. So for the drills where you can be laser focused in one-on-one battle, to me, that is advantageous. And then two, the other part of it as well is there's less context required. You get to see, A.J. Brown versus Quinyon Mitchell. You get to see Saquon Barkley versus Zach Bond. You get to see Dallas Goedert versus Reed Blankenship. There's a little bit less projection there. Oh, like, did the offensive lineman mess this up? Or, was this a bad ball? Was the timing messed up? Now you're just seeing, like, all right, it's good on good. And that's one of the good things about it as well, is that it's typically starter versus starter. It's not a ton of reps every single day, but I love being able to see the one-on-ones. And I would say, too, and you could speak to this, the Eagles, they've got 3 practice fields.
Yep.
Not every practice field is created equal from a vantage point standpoint for us in the media. And so if there are certain fields where you're right on top of the action, and there are others where you're not. But when you're in the one-on-ones, for the most part, you've got a good vantage point. All right. Sometimes they do like tight ends and the safeties over on the far field, and it's like 80 yards away. But for the most part, you're right in front of the action.
I agree with you there, and that actually ties into mine, which is, like, from a big picture perspective, they tell the truth with their actions, right? Because this time of year, it's the only time we get to watch, right? And so that's what I like about it, is that there's other times a year where you're taking their word for it. There's other times a year where it's like you're hearing things. It's happening right in front of you. And so, and it used to be at Lehigh that it was open to the public. Now there's a finite amount of people who get to watch it. So we're the eyes and the ears of the fans. And that's always a fun responsibility that you don't get, frankly, during the season. And so what I like about training camp is that for 1 month, you get the same intel basically as the coaches. Now, we're not there for walkthroughs, but the practices are happening in front of you. So they tell the truth. They can say what they want, but you're seeing it in front of you. And that's why, like, your practice observations and Bo's practice observations, they're so strong for that reason.
It's definitely, we talk about it with the draft as well, where, you can lie in press conferences, you can expand truths, but look, you draft a guy, like, you are showing, like, this is what our motivations are. And I agree. You kind of get that same sense here in training camp. Yeah.
So you're number 2.
All right. My number 2, joint practice. And it's a little bit new in terms of, like, over the last several years, we're starting to see basically every team has at least one joint practice every year. But I think the benefits of joint practice are you get to see your team go up against another team in a controlled environment. And so, you typically would get that in preseason, but now you are guaranteed. If you want to see, Terry McLaurin go up against Quinyon Mitchell, I'm just inventing a matchup there. You can script that in one-on-ones or in team 11-on-11, and you're good to go. And you got good work for those guys, and now you can get them off the field and put them on ice for the rest of the week. You don't have to worry about live contact in a preseason type environment. I love joint practice. I think that it's so beneficial, honestly, like, not being with the Eagles here this year. Like, that was one of the best times to go back and watch tape, if you could, to be able to go watch joint practice, because again, every rep matters. And you have twice the reps because there's another team on the field. So there's more football being played. I would say that's definitely one of my favorite parts of the summer.
And they're practicing against the Cleveland Browns this year. So mine here is that stuff happens, right? Which and I'll specifically mention it with, like, undrafted players.
Yeah.
Because you get to see. I always like when we talked about Reed Blankenship comes in, he's down the depth chart, and you see him start to move up the depth chart, right? You see the players who are we might call them camp bodies, and it's like, wow, this guy can play. So I really like those stories. I'll give an example actually that predates my time going in covering the Eagles. So this is going to be year 14 covering the Eagles. My first NFL beat was the New York Giants in 2010. and they had an undrafted rookie named Victor Cruz. And at the time, it was like, man, this guy keeps making plays. Who is he, right? And it's good stories from Paterson, New Jersey. And then later, sure enough, Victor Cruz eventually becomes one of the top wide receivers in the NFL for a period of time. And so you get to see that develop. And so when I say stuff happens, like Jordan Mailata is an example with the Eagles, we've seen his development up close. My first one was that they tell the truth, but the second one is that like there's friction. There's friction in good ways, and there's friction in bad ways. You get to mix it up. And so you see it sometimes too where a player, last year, for instance, Bryce Huff, we expected Bryce Huff to be more of a factor. He wasn't.
Yep.
Stuff happens in camp. You hate to say injuries, right? But I'm never happy there's injuries, right? But like there's the news cycle keeps changing. And as a reporter, I like it when there's like stuff that happens, and it's not just what do you think of this position, what do you think of that position, but like there's the storyline constantly updates.
Let me ask you this from a process standpoint. At what point do you say like, okay, this is a one-off versus this is something real that what we're seeing right now?
Yeah, good question. I would say by after the first preseason game.
Okay.
And so I think that week between the first and second preseason game, which this week will be the joint practices again. I'm sorry, this year will be the joint practices. That's when I start to say, all right, my eyes aren't deceiving me here.
Right. Yep. That's always something that's tough for me. Is like, all right, EJ Jenkins caught 2 touchdowns in the first week. All right, are we rocket ship to the moon here for EJ Jenkins? I'm just throwing names out. But sometimes those things take off, and sometimes they fizzle out. So it's certainly something you want to make sure you touch on.
Your third one.
My third one is also another process one. To me, I actually was just having the conversation with my wife this week. I'm a creature of habit. I love routine. And when you get into the summer, you get into the off season, I do like the freedom that May, June, and the early stages of July bring, where it's I can wake up. If I want to watch college film, great. If I want to watch NFL film, great. If I want to go through stats, great. Whatever I want to do, I can do it. But I love the routine of the football season, the cadence, and that begins in training camp. Now, the difference between the regular season and the summer is, the way I always put it when I first started, is that when you're in training camp, you can't tell if it's Monday, Sunday, or Wednesday, because every day is basically the same. When you get into the regular season, I couldn't tell you if next week is Halloween, Thanksgiving, or if the season's almost over, because you're in the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday routine where everything is the same that way. But I just love the fact that once we get to training camp, now it's time for football, and it's time to get back into routine. And again, as someone who loves to be in that structure, I'm very excited by that.
Yeah, so mine's actually a process thing too here.
Okay.
And following up on that, and that is it's earlier in the day. I'm a morning person. I was up this morning at 4:43, and if longtime viewers of the show know that.
What time did you go to bed last night?
I went to bed last night at 12:30 thereabouts. And so longtime viewers of the show know that I like the mornings, and that my best thinking comes in the morning, my best work comes in the mornings. And so this isn't like, there was a period of time where training camp practice was much earlier.
Yeah.
But what I like about this is that, they're on the practice field typically like 10 a.m. thereabouts. And that, they're off the practice field 11:30. You're finishing talking to players around 12:30, 1 o'clock. And yeah, it's different. There was a point in time with Andy Reid where you had 2-a-days.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly, there was a time when it was like 1 o'clock practices. And then Doug Peterson sometimes went early in the mornings, right? There was a time when it was like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But I'm a morning person. And once they get to the season, it shifts much later. As you all recall from the shows last year, typically, I wasn't out of the locker room until like 5:30, 6 o'clock. By that point, it's harder to get your work done. So I'm a morning person, and I like that training camp happens in the mornings.
No, it's a good call. Honestly, so I remember those Andy Reid training camps. They were the last two. So my first 2 years with the Eagles were Andy's last 2 years, and they were the last 2 years at Lehigh. And so it was like those early mornings, the mountain fog coming down off the mountain out there in Lehigh. There was some memories for sure.
What's your favorite thing about training camp as a fan? Leave that in the comments below. We will read them, and we will be back leading up to training camp here on the PHLY Eagles Show.